or the SBA tower currently serves Verizon, Sprint, AT&T, and T-Mobile. I'm handing out a letter here that's from our SBA site marketing manager that talks about how the existing tower won't provide any additional coverage and won't bring in any new carriers. The proposed tower will not. That we've never been contacted with any complaints from AT&T, and we've always charged SBA or AT&T according to the terms. I'm limited on time here. I'm handing out a propagation map.
Mr. Edwards, I think I have the opportunity to give you 2 more minutes, and I would let you go ahead since you've got considerable information to present.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. So the propagation maps that I just handed out compare at different radio frequencies AT&T's coverage on the existing SBA tower with the likely coverage on the proposed tower. Essentially, you can compare the first and second pages. Those are the same frequency with the existing tower versus the proposed tower. The third and fourth pages, the fifth and sixth, and the seventh and eighth. What you'll see is that the coverage is exactly the same. So there will be no improvement in coverage with this new tower. Also, the existing SBA tower has room for additional carriers and additional equipment. So the new tower is not needed to bring in additional carriers or to allow for increased service or coverage from current carriers on the tower. And with respect to those prop maps, just so you guys are aware, the green and blue colors represent strong coverage. Yellow represents marginal coverage, and poor coverage is in red. If you compare those pages, though, you'll see that it's exactly the same with respect to the existing tower and the proposed tower. I'd also like to hand out, these are excerpts. This last handout is an excerpt from your zoning code. It's specifically Article V, subsection C8. And it's the factors, it's the 8 factors that you're to consider with respect to your evaluation of conditional use permits. Subsection A, C, E, and H, we do not believe are satisfied by this application. This is a residential area with respect to subsection A. Subsection C is to the extent that the removal of the restrictions will detrimentally affect nearby property. I represent a cell tower company. Cell towers are ugly. You need cell towers, but you don't need more than are necessary. In this case, allowing this tower is just one more unnecessary tower in the area. So we don't believe that subsection is met either.
Mr. Edwards, you have reached the conclusion of your time. You're to be commended for how quickly you could speak. Would you repeat for me the items on the unified zoning code that you believe are not met? You said C, D, just by letter.
All right,
number?
yes, yeah, so it's subsections A, C, E, and H.
A, C, E, and H. Thank you. It's helpful to have that while we have paper in front of us.
Awesome.
Are there any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, I'm curious, did you present this information to the city of Hayesville?
I did not. I was not aware of this application at that point in time.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner Cunningham.
Is the state statute we're talking about KSA 66-219?
Yes, it is.
2019? Okay. All right, well, I'll have to say, when we're on Zoom, we don't have the opportunity to look at your handouts, but I am fairly familiar with that statute. Okay.
A question from, did you have a further question, Commissioner Cunningham?
No.
Okay,
No, that's
Commissioner
okay.
Warren, you have a question?
Does SBA microphone?
Microphone, please.
Does SBA pay a franchise fee to the city of Hayesville or the Sedgwick County, or is there any kind of franchise fee involved with your tower?
I'm not aware of that, but I'd be happy to check and follow back up.
Thank you.
Can I ask
Commissioner
a
Foster?
question of our city attorney, or is it county? County attorney, I guess. Would anyone care to just sort of clarify for us where we stand with the state statute as far as even considering these issues?
Kirk Sponsel, Assistant County Counselor. Once again, it's been referenced, but this is for KSA 66219. The portion in question deals with Section F, and the language for that section begins, and I quote, "To ensure uniformity across the state with respect to consideration of every application, an authority shall not, ... and then it goes on with 18 things you shouldn't consider. One of the things raised is evaluate an application based on the availability of other potential locations. Now, I believe what current presenter was indicating was that the door was opened by the applicant themselves when they referenced that. The plain reading of the statute itself doesn't necessarily suggest that statements by the applicants open the door for your consideration of those items. That's my initial reading of the statute. I certainly appreciate that there are certain circumstances, such as in legal cases, where items may be off limits, but if they're raised in court, then they can then be addressed by the other side. But at this time, the plain reading of the section suggests to me that those items listed should not be considered.
I guess where I'm confused is the exact definition of the terms. I mean, usually these seem to be co-location questions. I think that was what was originally written to try and prevent people from considering. But the availability of other potential locations instead of constructing a new structure. Does that actually apply in this case? I don't know. I guess my reading of the statute, admittedly, just at the moment here, basically means you're not allowed to consider anything when you consider whether you should approve a cell tower or not.
So, Kirk Sponsel, again, Assistant County Counselor. Section F3 indicates that you shall not evaluate an application based on the availability of other potential locations for the placement of wireless support structures or wireless facilities, including but not limited to the option to collocate instead of construct a new wireless support structure, or for substantial modifications of a support structure. The initial portion of that section or subsection indicates the availability of other potential locations for the placement. So plain reading of that to me indicates that you shouldn't be considering where other communication structures currently are.
I understood the speaker's objection to be but that was written for towers that are on public land, and this is on private land, therefore wouldn't apply. Do you have any advice or counsel related to that aspect?
Yes, if I may have 1 second briefly.
Okay.
Kirk Sponsel, Assistant County Counselor. Once again, there may have been specific sections in KSA 66219 that specifically applied to public property, but for the section in question, Section F, I interpret this as to apply to both public and private considerations. That based on the fact that there's no indication that it's only for state property within the language of Section F itself. And then, if I may reiterate what it says, to ensure uniformity across the state with respect to consideration of every application, an authority shall not ... And then if we look at the definition of application, it's indicated in KSA 66219 A4, then application means a request submitted by an applicant to an authority for the construction of a new wireless support structure or new wireless facility, the substantial modification of a wireless support structure or wireless facility, or co-location of a wireless facility or replacement of a wireless facility. Within that definition itself, there's no indication that it's specifically referencing only public land.
Thank you. Any other questions for the speaker? Thank you, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, I appreciate the opportunity.
Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak on this topic? Anyone participating virtually who would like to speak on this case? Hearing none, I would bring it back to the commission. What's your pleasure? What did I, oh, rebuttal, I'm sorry. The applicant, you have 2 minutes to respond.
So, Patrick Irwin, the applicant. Once again, I would point out to you all, I'm sure it's painfully obvious to everybody, that the tower owner there, they're very interested in preserving the monopoly they have. That kind of shows you the kind of financial unreasonability that we're talking about, that they're going to these sorts of lengths to stop our project. In addition, there's nobody from the community other than their attorney that has a problem with this location. That goes to how we've cited this project and how we've made it very palatable for the neighboring property owners.
Okay.
Thank you.
You have a question for the applicant? Commissioner Warren, he has a question for you. Please remain.
I have the same question for you. Do you know if there's a franchise fee paid to the city of Hayesville?
There is not. Franchise fees are not for wireless structures. They are for the landline, the fiber optic, and the copper wires that are in the ground.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, now we will bring it back to the commission for discussion. Commissioner Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, since staff has approved this, I want to make the motion to approve it. I think basically what we got in front of us is going to have to be possibly decided in a court system, and I don't want to be the judge of this project, so I move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve Commissioner Bill Johnson, a second from Commissioner Warren. Any discussion from the commission further? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Motion passes 13-0. Thank you for your testimony. And now we'll move on to item 4.3, PUD 2022-00022. Aaron, will you please begin with the staff report?
Good afternoon, Erin Ebach-Friend with the Planning Department. PUD 2022-00022 is a request in the county to rezone an 150-acre property, you see on the map here, from SF5 single-family residential to PUD Plan Unit Development to create the Jacobs Farms PUD number 107. As proposed, PUD 107 would allow a mixture of housing types, including single-family residences, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, townhouses, in a medium density residential development. The application area covers nearly this entire quarter section with the exception of a small property here that is approximately 1.15 acres in size and is developed with a single-family home. You can see on the map that the North Fork Calfskin Creek bisects the property and kind of divides it into two areas. And as the PUD has been proposed, it follows that kind of natural boundary of both the creek and the floodplain. The proposed PUD would be comprised of two parcels, parcel 1 and parcel 2, which would abut, so parcel 1, I should say, would abut the floodplain reserve to the north. If Paul, if we could go to the PUD map, please. So you can see here, parcel 1, and parcel 2 to the north, with a reserve dividing the two, covering both the floodplain and the creek area. The proposed PUD language for parcel 1 would permit 3 dwelling units per acre, and parcel 2 would permit 5 dwelling units per acre. This is significantly less than what is currently or permitted by zoning code in the TF3 two-family residential district, which permits 14.5 dwelling units per acre. So while some of the other development standards cited in the staff report are per the TF3 district, the density is significantly less than what would be permitted in TF3. The requested zoning classification does provide flexible development standards, allowing compact residential development surrounding green spaces. These include the reduction of setback requirements and the permitting of zero lot line development. Zero lot line development enables structures to be built at the side setback line as long as a minimum distance between the neighboring structures are maintained, and that is per the building code that then designates that, which is 6 foot. 2 standards for the minimum setbacks were requested, and those depend on whether or not the lots abut alleys or not. There are charts provided in the staff report that go through each of those standards, but just kind of a brief overview. The lots abutting alleys have lesser requirements in regard to their front, street side, and interior setbacks. So the front setback for alley abutting lots is only going to be 7.5 foot as proposed, as well as the street side setback. The interior side setback for both alley abutting and non-alley abutting lots is again going to be 0, provided a minimum of 6 feet between structures on adjoining lots per the building code. And then the rear setback is going to be a 4-foot rear setback for lots abutting alleys. For those not abutting the alley, the front setback is going to be 17 foot. The street side setback, 10 foot. Again, interior side is going to be that minimum of 6 foot or 0. And then the rear setback is 12 foot as requested. Further, the requested development standards are outlined on in a chart on page 3, and a few notable items are, again, so the language of the PUD requires a larger lot width than what typically would be required in the TF3 standards, so 48 foot compared to 35 foot minimum lot width. The PUD language does state a 75% lot coverage, whereas should it have been to TF3 standards, that would be governed by the size of the lot and the buildable area within setbacks. The maximum height for the structures on the site would be 35 foot. And then the covered patios would be permitted in setbacks, which would be a difference from what is currently permitted in the zoning code. Overall, the requested reductions are consistent with what have been approved recently for similar medium density PUD developments. So the Moorings PUD at West 42nd Street North and North Meridian Avenue, I know, was recently approved, and this is kind of a similar PUD modeled after that one. Again, so the minimum 6 foot separation between structures as opposed to a 12 foot, which would generally be required in the TF3 district, would enable compact development on the site. This is not uncommon, so other zoning districts, LC limited commercial and less restrictive, do permit structure separations of 0 or 5 foot depending on their ownership. So depending on if they're under the same ownership, then they're not as required to have that, that buffer separation. The proposed parking requirements for the property do meet those outlined in the zoning code for single-family and two-family dwellings, though for multifamily dwellings there is a slight reduction, so the zoning code requires 1.25 stalls per one-bedroom or efficiency dwelling unit and 1.75 stalls per two-bedroom or larger dwelling unit, while the proposed parking would be 1 parking stall per dwelling unit. If we could go to the slide that shows the kind of bike path area. So the area of the reserve where the floodplain and creek are located is the proposed site of a planned bike path. And if it's not on the slides, it is in the staff report. And I did want to point out there were some questions in regard to the legend. So it's a little bit difficult to see here because it's black and white, but everything that is on the map right now is planned. So there were some questions in regard to whether or not there was existing bike lane infrastructure on 4th Street. That is just planned. It has not been constructed at this point. So I did want to note that.
That's your page 10 if Paul's still looking for it. Or is that it? Okay.
In regard to screening, the zoning code would require solid screening when multifamily uses are developed abutting or across from residential zoning districts. Staff has recommended a 6-foot screening fence be required where single-family and 2-family residences outside of the PUD area abut multifamily dwellings within the PUD. We have spoken with the applicant about this language, and they are amenable to constructing screening to the north and west where properties could potentially be developed, multifamily properties could potentially be developed abutting single-family residences. In regard to the area of the application, the southeast and southwest corners of West 4th Street North and North 135th Street West are developed with suburban scale residential development and are within the city limits of Wichita. I do want to note that this application is currently in unincorporated Sedgwick County. They have submitted an application for annexation as well as a plat that will be reviewed at the next MAPC meeting. Because this is in the county, the notification letters for the property were sent out to folks within, or property owners within a 100-foot radius of the property. Those were sent on the 8th of November.
Aaron, can I just correct it? 1,000-foot radius.
Sorry, 1,000-foot radius. The site abuts properties zoned SF20 single-family residential and SF5 single-family residential to the north. These are developed with agricultural uses and a single-family residential subdivision. Properties south of the site are developed with the Highland Springs 2nd Edition and the Highland Springs Commercial Edition. Both are within the city limits of Wichita and are developed, are zoned SF5 single-family residential district and LC Limited Commercial District, as well as a small portion zone GO General Office District. Those properties are within CUP DP 233, and the commercial properties are currently undeveloped. The quarter sections to the east and west of the site are zoned SF20 single-family residential, are located in unincorporated Sedgwick County and are currently used as agricultural land. As I previously stated, we have received an application to plat the property, and I will defer to the agent of the applicant to speak to that if there's any questions in regard to that application. However, access to the land in the PUD will be determined at the time of platting. If we could go to the growth map, please, Paul. So the proposed zoning is in conformance with the future growth concept map of the community investments plan. The map identifies the area in which the site is located to be primarily appropriate for new residential and residential employment growth. So you can see that kind of hatched area. The majority of the site, as stated in the new residential area, is likely to be developed with uses predominantly found in the residential category, which provides for a variety of housing types, including more compact cluster-style development. The southeast corner of the site, again, that's in that hatched area, is designated as a residential and employment growth area, defined as those likely to be developed with uses of a mixed nature, and can be developed with higher density residential uses when located near commercial or other higher intensity uses. So the site's proximity to that LC zoning to the south make the proposed medium density development appropriate for the site. Based on the information available at the time of the staff report, staff recommends approval of the application subject to conditions. The site shall be developed in conformance with the attached recommended development guidelines and general provisions of the PUD, with which the applicant has stated they are amenable to. And then the applicant shall record a PUD certificate with the Register of Deeds. And then those copies shall be provided to the Planning Department staff. With that, I will go to the site photos. Okay, so this is the Copper Estates located north of the subject site. Next photo, please. This is the 1.15 acre property in the quarter section that is not included in the application area. Next photo, please. And this is the subject site as well as the north 135th Street right-of-way. Next photo, please. Again, another photo of the subject site. Next photo, please. Another photo of the subject site. Next photo, please. And then back to the map there. I'm glad to answer any questions you'll have.
Any questions from the commission for Aaron? Commissioner Foster?
Aaron, just for my curiosity, immediately west of this site, does the floodplain or floodway extend to block access from that west side? Does it extend south? It looks like there's a creek running through the
So
parcel to the west.
I know it goes northwest. In regard to access, do you mean?
Excuse me. I'm curious about the south end, the southeast corner of the parcel to the west. Does that floodplain associated with that creek extend all the way down to 4th Avenue?
I believe
know?
it kind of curves up and follows the reserve.
Okay, so theoretically, there might be a future connection on that end, access to 4th maybe? I know we're getting into platting and I don't want to do that, but I'm just trying to get a grasp of where the floodways and floodplains are.
Yeah, so I know that it kind of curves up like that, but in regard to access, I might defer to the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Aaron at this time? If not, we'd call forward the applicant or agent. Please state your name, and you have 10 minutes.
Good afternoon, Brian Lindeback, MKEC Engineering, 411 North Webb Road, on behalf of the owner and applicant. This owner is, I think some of the planning commissioners may know this, I don't know if the general public knows this, but is the developer of Epcon Communities. If you've been to some of those communities at Estancia Development, there's also some communities at Auburn Lakes, the courtyards at Auburn Hills. So I think just I wanted to let everybody know that that is the style of development that we're talking about here. We have a PUD in this case because we intend to allow some differing building types. They'll all be residential, no commercial properties in this development. In fact, we filed for the first phase of the development on the south, and they're all single-family units. We did change a couple minor things, worked with staff on that, and thank you, Aaron, for the great presentation. I did provide a little sketch, and maybe she provided it to you as an overlay that shows a small triangle. I just wanted to make note that parcel, that little tiny triangle accounts for 4/10 of an acre, or sorry, 4/100 of an acre, and that it would swap from the floodplain property, the reserve, to parcel 1. So very minor change, but I thought it'd be important to let you know that just so that, everybody's aware. We did change from original application the density of this development significantly, as Aaron presented. So that's something to be aware of as well. There is a major floodplain in the middle, and that's why we've set it aside as a reserve, and that will not be developed with any housing or other improvements. We do plan, of course, there's some permitting and things that have to occur. We do plan to connect the two sides of the development together with a pedestrian bridge or possibly even multiple bridges, but for certain one bridge to make it a better neighborhood, a more connected neighborhood. We do have looping sidewalks planned for the entire development. Of course, that's not necessarily part of the PUD, but that's something that we do have in the works. But we do intend to have different housing types and that was the reasoning for some of the different components of the TF3 zoning that as effectively we have a base zoning of TF3. So allows for some multifamily or townhouse developments, things of that nature. But I think the important thing is to know that the density is low, very, obviously not too dissimilar from the nearby housing. And then, we've got a lot of open space that we build into our projects as well for clubhouses and things of that nature. I think that's the main points I wanted to get across. Of course, the building heights are the same as single family, which adjoins to the rear or to the north, if you will, and on to the south of Central Avenue. We do have that plat filed, and for those who aren't on subdivision committee, we do, on that little exhibit that I provided you, it shows a little sketch of that. And then in that, it shows access to Central, which we do intend to have as part of our operation. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Foster?
Just, Brian, the same question I had before. Does the floodplain wrap around the west end of this parcel, or is it only on the northern portion?
Basically, let me use the pointer here. The floodplain follows the creek, and then it terminates here in the corner. So that's where the floodplain is, and that's where it'll stay. We don't have plans to change the floodway at all.
Okay,
So-
the southeast corner of the parcel to the west is what I'm looking at, the parcel to the west of the site.
Yes, in this area here.
No, the south.
Other side.
Over here?
There you go.
No, there's
Does that,
no floodplain there.
okay,
The creek is up here.
thanks.
Okay, any other questions? We will then move to public comment for this item. So those of you present who would like to speak, just take your turns at the podium. Please go ahead, first speaker, state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes to present to us. Okay, go ahead. Will you? Yeah, right, absolutely. So residents, your HOA president wants residents to go first, so please line right up. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. And we do ask that you have 3 minutes. As the speakers come up, we ask you not to repeat items that have been stated before. We just want the nature of your concerns. Go ahead, your name and address, please.
My name is Linda Stamback. It's 14302 West Taylor Circle. My property is I back up to Central, and I'm located right in that corner what we're talking about. And I do not have a big objection to single-family homes. However, I am objecting to multiple family homes. And I am concerned about traffic. I'm concerned about noise. And I'm concerned about the construction, and is the construction going to be to the caliber of our neighborhood? Because our neighborhood is extremely nice. And I also would like to know a little bit more about what they're talking about as far as, it sounded like they're going right up to Central with very little room between this road and the development. And Central's only 2 lanes, and is going to have to eventually go to 4 lane because of the houses going in down the road too, on Colwich Road and Central. So, like I said, I want something nice to look at. I don't want to see a bunch of duplexes and triplexes and Lord knows who lives there.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the speaker? If not, next speaker, please come forward.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Jason Brake, 14,000 West Taylor Circle. So to speak a little bit to the density of it, they mentioned about single family, is that Aaron never showed on the bottom, we're on the south side where it says North Thoroughbred Court, West Taylor Circle, that's Highland Springs. The pictures never showed Highland Springs. My house is 65 feet across in width. So to match, they said something, the developer said something about matching the community, what's already there. So my house is 65 feet wide. These lots are 40 foot wide. So my house would not even fit on the lot. It'd take 1.5 of what they're trying to propose. So that does not match what's already in the community. They talk about commercial already there. We haven't seen it. Aaron said it hasn't been developed yet. So we don't know what that looks like. So they said, because there's already commercial there, we can include it in this HUD. It's not there, so we have no idea what they're talking about. As a people of the community I have no idea what any of this is going to look like. They tell us this, they glance over real quickly about the multifamily. So I think it's the density of that we're not sure about. That, and then to speak a little bit of what she said before me is with Central, it's a culverted road right now. There are no shoulders on it, there's no guttering. So what happens with that when you're going to get 2.5 times the amount of people live there now because of the way this is going to be packed in together. So more of mine is how that is going to be really put together tightly. I think they said there's room for one person to park a car. Right, currently at my street with the way we did it, there's 5 for people like that. So the density is going to be so much tighter than what we have currently and what is there present. So to me, it really doesn't match what's already there. It's going to be a lot more compact and things like that. From some of the townhomes, it looks like they're a garage. Then you walk upstairs to go above it and live above the garage. So that's all you can fit on a 40-foot lot because your garage is at least 20 foot, your driveway's 20 foot. You have setbacks that are trying to squeeze them together even tighter. You're going to have a lot more homes in there than what's already currently what we're looking at. So that's more of my concern is that, and then also the property values. So now you're going to have this, what happens with that? So that's really the big concern of that is that's why we went out there. Now this is something new coming in after the fact. To the north side, they are putting in more townhomes. On the south side by Auburn, they're doing that another section down. So they're putting a lot of that in now. And at Kellogg and 169th, they're putting in that development right now. So there is a lot of that housing already going in. Feels like there's already kind of excessive amount of that already. Do we really need any more of it? So prefer to keep it residential to what we have currently, the precedence that is already set, which would be traditional 60-foot wide homes, 100-foot lots, things like that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Carla Woods, 13914 West Taylor Circle. And I think the agent mentioned that there have been some recent changes. I don't know how recent those changes were, but the document that we received in October shows that on this bottom part, the first addition or the first section that they want to build, it looks like, from my count, there's 89 home sites. So talking about the density, that is a lot of homes right there, and they are butting right up to Central. I don't see where there's any greenway or any green space or bike lane or anything there that they're talking about. So that's going to be right up against the people that are backing up to Central on the south. The other thing that I would like to ask, we haven't seen any pictures of what they're really proposing. I know they've talked about Estancia, they've talked about Auburn, but I've seen some pictures of something that they recently built in Manhattan, Kansas, that looks very much like some of the other things that we're seeing in our nearby that don't look very nice, that are very compact, very, be kind about my adjectives, but I think I'm making my point. So I would like to see a lot more detail before we approve anything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker, please. And again, any new information or new issues that have been raised?
Hello, my name is Andrew Pinson. I live at 1114 North Axarben Street. That's how we pronounce it. That's actually north of the property that or the area they're talking about developing. My concerns would be, obviously, what a lot of people have already stated with the traffic and the volume of people that are going to be in this area now. Having a duplex or having a triplex brings a lot of people in that are generally renting or only going to be there temporarily. I would agree with most everybody else, I'm sure, in the area that we would like to see the single-family homes and the single-family residences built on that kind of lot. I don't think anybody would have a problem with that. But when you're bringing in people that are only going to be there temporarily or looking for just a quick fix in a bad situation, you're not bringing in people that take care of the community, that treat other people with respect. And I've lived north of that property for about a year now, and I have a Ring. A lot of people have a Ring doorbell, and every week it gives me a crime report. And all the crime reports that I see coming from that were reported to the police are either areas south of Kellogg or just north of us where they have a couple of duplex sections. That's where that crime seems to come from. And it's nothing against the people that live there. It's just that, like I say, if you're not somebody who's wanting to be there permanently, you just kind of don't care about what's going on around you, and you just kind of bring that attitude with you. So I have a 5-year-old little girl. We'd love to see her grow up in the area. We'd love to have homes built south of us in that area, but we need them to be permanent homes and not pack them in 6 feet apart. I wouldn't have bought in that area and paid the price we did. Obviously, super high price because of inflation and everything that's been going on. And we bought it last year on the top end. And I just really feel like this development, when you start packing in triplexes and duplexes or putting 4 families in a home and giving them one space to park, is going to just destroy the investment that I've made to live in that area. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Tim Carr, 13906 West Alderney, Coppergate. I'm an at-large board member for Coppergate Estates. One of the things that our members are kind of passionate about or we have problems with is we have a lot of rentals in our neighborhood already. When we start a development and we build really small houses or triplexes or fourplexes, we're going to bring that much more rentals, people that aren't really connected to the neighborhood. They're just going to be transient. They're going to move, live there 6 months or a year, and then move out. We really like our neighborhood, Coppergate. Highland Springs is much even nicer than ours, down to the south, to put between a very nice area and a nice area, houses that are going to be not as nice, a lot smaller, a lot less, will lower both of those property values and cost the county tax dollars as well. I have a concern also when you're looking at the north end of this development is, are they going to come out onto 135th, or we have a little T road, are they going to connect to that, and then all of a sudden our area that's fairly quiet is going to get really busy with traffic running through there to get back out to 135th. So I'm not sure if I can move the mouse, but right over in here, there's a road that's got a T. Is that how the traffic is going to get out onto 135th, and are they going to be driving through our neighborhood? I know I've seen neighborhoods like that, and where emergency crews need access, they'll have a gate that's locked that the firemen can cut it and get in and take care of stuff. We don't necessarily want people just flying through the neighborhood because it's a quick, easy way to get out. We already have problems around our pond area where people are driving through a little too quick. If we had that much more traffic, it's only going to exacerbate the problem. So we believe single-family housing is great. We'd like it to match at least what Coppergate is and be a little closer to Highland Springs. We don't want to see property values in houses that are lower in value, because that will bring the whole neighborhood's property values lower when you mix very nice, and not so nice. There are plenty of areas, as they said, 135th and Kellogg, they're building a bunch of duplexes. If you go down 135th south of Kellogg, there's quite a few. There's areas that this can be done, but I don't think we need to do this in between those. And we haven't talked about Rainbow Lakes, which is just east and to the south, which is an even nicer area. So you've got all these really nice areas. We probably shouldn't bring something in that's not consistent with the character of the area. So I would encourage you to reject this application until we have more information. Make sure that we're provided with that so we can ensure that we can agree with what's happening.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does anyone, we have a question for you, Commissioner Warren.
No, the big change in the market in the last couple of years where a number of multifamily properties are owner occupied. If this was majority of these properties that were multifamily but were owner occupied, would your resistance be as great?
The resistance wouldn't be as great, but I think most of these are not going to be owner occupied. They're going to be somebody that's bought a duplex, and there are great landlords and there are landlords that don't care as much. And we already have properties in our HOA that we have trouble getting them to maintain, to mow, to do the stuff, and they're rentals now. When we start adding multifamilies in the same area, they're liable to end up with the same problems, if not worse.
Any other questions for the speaker? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
The next speaker.
My name is Matt Peterson. I live at 14209 West Taylor Circle, so I live within 500 feet of the proposed development area. I don't want to take the gusto of Clint, who's worked hard on behalf of our residents to assemble a more detailed description of some of the challenges we have. But personally, for me, I think there are probably three main areas of concern, which are number one, the infrastructure, if it's truly set up and prepared to handle the additional volume, regardless of rental type or owner type, that's still going to be there. Also, too, tied in with that is the safety and the security of what we have. We have, just to give a little context, our housing development has 290 units in it. So we are a fully developed unit, or a fully developed association. And one of the other prior speakers mentioned, just to give context to what's developed even in the first phase, is significantly more in a much smaller, tighter area. To me, I'm also concerned about, like I mentioned, infrastructure, the size of the roads, the safety, and then also just overall values, what that does to our property. So we continue to receive, just like everybody in Sedgwick County, those notices of our increased value. And that's what helps support our system, this system here. So if that's gonna not continue on that same trend, that gives me concern, because that shows that we're not, receiving that appreciation that we, I think, have worked hard, invested in our homes to help, grow that going forward. So with that, I'll yield my time unless there's questions.
Any questions for the speaker? Okay, thank you for your testimony.
All right, my name is Clint Stevens, 13608 West Hartner. I am the president of the HOA. I want to appreciate the opportunity to come speak to you all. Thank you for all the residents that came out and spoke on our behalf. They've hit on a lot of the items that I was going to hit on. I did submit a letter from the HOA. It does look like you guys received that, so I appreciate the opportunity for that. I'm going to try to hit on a couple things real fast that have not been hit on so far. First off, the lack of communication is frustrating with this opportunity and the development going in. As the HOA president, I just recently found out myself, which is a little bit of delay in our reporting back to you all. There's a lot of mischaracterization and misleading statements within the staff report and also the proposal development. One in particular is 135th Street is a 2-lane road, and the proposal says it's a 4-lane road. That is not the case. There's also a lot of safety concerns with the bike path that's identified. There is no way to expand 4th Street Central going west to make that safe. Another major concern that we have is much like what Coppergate presented. Our primary road is Thoroughbred, which is right here. That road connects through Highland Springs and then comes out on 135th. With the congestion that already exists with the intersection at 4th and 135th, putting 89 more houses right there on that corner is going to exacerbate that problem, in which time people are going to use our thoroughfare to avoid that intersection and then create an undue burden on our residents and our ability to maintain our properties. So that's a major concern we have. Again, so the property values, the crime increases either direct or indirect from that many more properties being developed in the areas of concern, and then the traffic items that we've expressed. I do want to hit on the fact that, go back to the mischaracterization piece, somebody already said that there are no photos of Highland Springs anywhere in this proposal. The street was not identified correctly. Parcel 1, which we haven't talked about much, outside of a couple of residents mentioning how the current development is. They say 3 dwellings per acre. If you look at the plot that they've provided, it's actually 6 plots per acre. You can take one of our actual home structures and set it inside of their lots. The other thing I want to hit on real fast is the fact that we have our home sales, last 25 homes, $375,000. We have over 2,000 square feet on a main above ground level. Rainbow Lakes is even larger. So when we look at a multi-dwelling, multiple homes, compact, what they're telling us they're wanting to build and what we're actually seeing are not matching up, and it's going to devalue the properties in the area.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the speaker? Is there anyone participating virtually who would like to speak on this item?
Yes, I would like to speak.
Okay, please give your name and address.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Nita Hansen. I live at 13814 Hartner Court in the Highland Springs Addition. And I did submit a letter to you folks. I'm, of course, doing this virtually. I hope you have my letter in front of you. But
Yes,
to add to a couple of things, first off, I live on the pond that you see in your drawing, and I want to address my floodplain concerns. It was brought out earlier in your meeting that land currently is in the county, and the city looks to annex it, but in the fact it's not in the city currently, that no notifications were sent downstream to the floodplain areas of Rainbow Lakes, Breezy Points, and Auburn Hills. The 17 years that I've lived in Highland Springs, I have seen the 100-year floodplain enacted. I have seen 135th underwater. The picture of the pond that you see, you'll see looks like a corridor that goes up to Central Street. That is the emergency overflow floodplain. I am concerned that development of this land without proper infrastructure will cause that to actually backflow up into our neighborhood and flood existing homes. I know that flooding when Highland Springs was being under construction was an issue for the residents of Rainbow Lakes and Breezy Points. And I feel that those neighbors should have an input as to what gets developed that may affect the flow of floodwaters in through their neighborhood. One last thing I would like to point out, I realize the company has its office here in Wichita, but it is incorporated in the state of Kentucky. And in checking corporation records in Kentucky, that corporation is not in good standing currently with the state of Kentucky. So I have little faith of a company that can't take care of their legal responsibilities of their incorporations, and would hope that that would get resolved before anything gets moved forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the speaker? Okay, hearing none. Any other persons participating virtually who would like to speak?
I would like to ask a question, just a clarification.
Okay, and all the questions that are being raised will be answered by the applicant on the rebuttal. So go ahead, your name and address, please, and then state your question.
It's Cynthia Zakowski, 638 North Thoroughbred Court in Highland Springs. He mentioned access to Central, so I'm assuming they're wanting to put the entrance to the development off of Central. That is going to be a big problem with traffic and the ability to make that happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we have one other speaker that wants to approach the podium. Anyone else virtually?
I do.
Okay, can we wait for the virtual, please? Go ahead. Your name and address, please.
Jared Wilson, 423 North Exarban. I oppose this project due to the layout that they have, the amount of buildings that they have on there, and the fact that it doesn't hold water compared to Highland Springs. I think that whatever's built there should be built similar to the surroundings. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any other virtual participants who'd like to speak?
Yes, I would like to.
Okay, your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Danny Melikar. I live at 1002 North Exarban Street. I am on the north side of the development application. My question is, I'm not sure if this, I guess, is for the applicant or not, but will there be any development expenses or due to construction or road expansion possibilities be placed upon surrounding neighborhoods in the form of specials?
Okay, thank you for your question. We'll get that answered for you. Anyone else participating virtually who'd like to speak? Then you want to go ahead, please, and I'm sorry I missed you earlier.
Okay. My name's Don Albert. I live at 120 South, 151st Street West, Goddard, Kansas. My family owns the property to the east of the platted area, that farm ground there. My main concern has to do with going from a most restrictive zoning to a least restrictive zoning of the PUD, especially when there's really no definition as to what that is, other than it just says it's a planned unit development. So with that, I'd like to know, whoever's doing the development, what's going to be the valuation of these homes that are going in? What's going to be the square footage of them? What, if you're renting them, what kind of rent are you looking at getting for those? Are you looking at getting $500 a month? Or are you looking at getting $3,000 a month, like from a luxury type condo or a duplex? So there just hasn't been enough information presented in these documents. And if I want to ask for the plat, I wouldn't even got it. All I got in the mail was this 2-page letter that tells me nothing. So I agree with everybody that's here. They didn't really get any information, and here we are in front of this. So we haven't even had a chance to talk with the people that are looking at doing the development. And I don't know who owns it, if it's still the Jacob Trust or if it's the gentleman that presented this, because it was presented by the Jacob Trust. So if they're not the owners of it, they shouldn't be the one even asking for it.
Okay. Thank you for your questions. Any questions for the speaker? As the Planning Commission, we're making a decision on the use of the land. The platting officially comes later, but I think the applicant does have some information about the platting. So any other speakers on this topic? If not, we call the applicant back for your responses to the current concerns expressed, please.
Thank you. The property is owned by Perfection Signature Properties. They have recently purchased a property from the Jacobs Trust. It's been a project that's been long, and they've been working diligently for a long time to get that. The statement that this is the least restrictive is actually a false statement. I'm sure planning staff can chime in on that, but I think this is not the least restrictive, most restrictive, or / least restrictive zoning classification. We're actually going up to effectively a TF3 type zoning with some caveats, and that's what the PUD allows for. It's a custom zoning classification. So I think that's good to know. As far as expenses go, a plat will occur on these properties. Those platting efforts will be, and specials will go directly to these specific properties involved and not adjoining properties, not neighbors outside the plat. Notifications, this is actually the most extensive notification that happens, and that's 1,000 foot. So I think everybody should be aware of that. Our company, MKEC Engineering, has done significant drainage modeling in this area, and we've done street designs in this area. In fact, I believe we're working on the 135th Street improvements, which will widen that from a 2-lane road to something more significant than a 2-lane road. And I'm sure there'll be public hearings and meetings on that, those efforts. But those efforts are underway and at an initial stage. Parcel 1, we're requesting 3 dwelling units per acre. That's like 30 acres there. So we're not, there's gonna be a lot of open space built into our plan. We've got, 4+ acres here, and then, the reserve area to the north is another, I think it's roughly 30 acres I have right in front of me. But I think the statement about mischaracterization is incorrect as well. I think it's well represented as far as the facts. As far as the maintenance of the properties, I think that was brought up. If you've been to an EPCON community, you'll know that the developments are all maintained by one entity, the homeowners association, and they do a nice job of maintaining them, in my opinion. If you want to look at pictures of the development, you can certainly go to other EPCON communities, but certainly, you can also look at their website, at the EPCON website. And one of the unique factors in this, why we have a PUD, is to allow for alleys. I think you've seen that case at Moorings development that we recently did, and this one also allows for some different housing types. The idea there is to give more seniors, because these EPCON communities are geared towards seniors. Certainly, others could live in them as well, but it gives some of the multifamily component, which won't be the entirety of the project. It'll be only a portion of it, would allow for some more flexibility and be able to afford to live in these nice properties. I think the average EPCON community is selling for about $400,000, so I think that's a significant number, and it's similar to what's nearby. With that, I think I've answered all the questions that came up.
Commissioner Hartman has a question for you.
There was a question regarding the sidewalk there along Central and the open space or the greenway. They were saying there wasn't any greenway, but it looks to be on this plat that you got lots of reserve area there along the road.
Yeah, we plan to put a berm there as well as a fence. Of course, an entry monument that would go into the development. It'll look very nice. We're going to play off of the farm name that we have in the Jacobs Farm. It's been a beloved property to the Jacobs over the years, and I think we hope to do it well with the legacy of the property.
Other questions from the commission for the applicant?
All right, thank you.
Okay, could you describe like the typical client? I think you said seniors, and I'm assuming you don't mean high school seniors. You mean people, older people like me.
Yeah.
What is the typical client that you're targeting in your other EPCON communities?
Probably your 55 up is what you would typically see, and then maybe empty nesters. Some of the houses are significantly larger than you might think. I think I've given this presentation years ago, but with my colleague, but think of these as ranch houses that are turned 90 degrees. Mostly. We do have some new styles that are planned for this area that will utilize the alley component, so parking would be in the rear. So you wouldn't see the garages from the fronts of the houses. So that's a significant difference than what we've done in the past. So there'll be some new styles of housing and new ways of doing things. And I think it'll be well received. I think it's one of those things that's hard to visualize until you go through some neighborhoods and take a look and see how they look.
Questions at this point are from the commission only. And again, this is a plating decision. Commissioner Williams-Bay?
Yes. Now, is phase one going to be totally senior?
Yeah, the whole development is geared towards the 55 plus. So, but like you'll find in other parts of the community, we've done numerous developments like this elsewhere. There'll be some people that just choose to live in that community that aren't 55. So I think that's certainly allowed.
And your experience has been primarily people are purchasing even the multi-family units if there are multi-family.
Yeah, or they can rent, but I think one thing to note is the Auburn projects to the south off 135th, they're all sold out. So this is a important project to our client to keep the projects moving and to keep providing for more diversified housing in Wichita.
Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission for discussion. I'm sorry, we've already closed the public hearing portion. That concludes with your call to speak. That you've met the applicant, so certainly he'll entertain questions, I'm sure. I'm sorry, we have closed the public hearing section, and again, I'm sorry, we've received the materials that were submitted by the HOA and by private citizens, so I'm going to bring this back to the commission now for our discussion. And again, this is a land use decision. Is this land appropriate for residential uses as have been described? And the planned unit development concept, which is simply some adjustments for how the residences might be laid out on this property. Okay, commissioners?
I would move to approve per staff comments.
I have a motion for approval from Commissioner Foster. Second from Commissioner McKay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the proposal, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? The motion carries 13-0. Thank you for your testimony. And again, if you were noted on the register as participating, I believe planning staff will give you further information as we move into the platting section of this process, which will include information about entrances, roadways, et cetera. So you might want to continue to follow with that, okay? The zoning has been approved at this point. It will have to go further to the city council and the county commissioners. So both the county commissioners and the city council will hear the recommendation of this body. So you might want to watch the agendas for those two bodies as well. Scott, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, just a quick clarification that this one is in the county.
Oh, in the county with annexation.
So it will go to the county commission. However, we do have the annexation pending, and we do know that from a case, maybe not similar in terms of zoning, but similar situation, that the county deferred it, and then later it was annexed, and then has gone to the city council. So it's on schedule to go to the BOCC, but there is a possibility that the annexation could take place before, which would send it to city council. So please, if you're interested in this case, please sign in with the sheet so that we can keep you informed about where the case is. There is the...
We're just making a recommendation, so the next step will be the county commission will hear the case with this recommendation, or the city council, depending if annexation happens first or last. And if your name is on the list, we'll make sure to get information about the next steps. Okay. Okay. All right, thank you. The next item on our agenda, and we'll give Scott just a moment there. We have item 4.5. Is the applicant in the room for 4.5 zoning case 2022-00061?
She said she'd be here virtually. Yes, I see her.
Okay. All right, we see you. Thank you very much. Yes. So will you please proceed with the staff presentation?
Yes.
Christina.
Christina Reith, Associate Planner. This is case number zone 2022-00061. I have the applicant here with me. I apologize if I mispronounce your name, but I have Inadi Suber. And the current zoning for this parcel is SF5, Single Family Residential District. And they're requesting LC Limited Commercial District, and the property is 0.41 platted acres, and it's located at 2639 South Meridian.
The subject site currently consists of 2 parcels. The parcel to the north, which is the small one here, is currently undeveloped. And the parcel to the south is developed with a, what appears to be like an auto mechanic garage and a parking lot. So the applicant proposes to build multifamily homes with commercial retail on the first floor, such as a convenience store. And the reason that they're doing the zone change is because LC, Limited Commercial District, is the most restrictive zoning that allows convenience stores. The applicant has not submitted a site plan or has not specified parking, so I can't get into those specifics today. But I do want to point out that LC Limited Commercial District allows, high-intensity uses by right in an area primarily surrounded by single-family residential dwellings. So some of those uses include convenience stores, as the applicant is proposing, hospitals, hotels and motels, pawn shops, and vehicle repair. Additionally, the height restrictions increase from 35 feet in SF5 single family to 80 feet in LC Limited Commercial District. If you look at the zoning map here, the character of the neighborhood is primarily residential. All of the area that is in white here is zoned SF5 single-family residential, and they're developed with single-family residential dwellings, and you'll see that later in the photos. To the south here is MF29, but it's developed with a church, and the rest is, as I mentioned, is SF5. So the requested zone change is not in conformance with the community investments plan. Paul, would you go to the future growth concept map for me, please? Thank you. The map identifies a subject area as appropriate for residential uses. So those include single-family detached homes, semi-detached homes, patio homes, duplexes, townhouses, apartments, and multifamily units. So while the proposed use of multifamily homes may be appropriate for the area, the reason that they're doing to LC is because they want that higher intensity commercial use, which is allowed by right in that district, and that's considered to be less appropriate. So the requested zone change is in partial conformance with the Wichita Places for People plan. The property is located within an area of opportunity, which is an area that generally exhibits economic challenges with a disconnected development pattern. And these areas typically need strategic investment, both public and private. So rezoning this property as LC would allow for some development on a small scale, so that would be somewhat appropriate. However, it identifies the subject site to be within 1/4 mile north of a neighborhood hub at South Meridian, West Pawnee, down here. So that's where you would see the multi-unit housing types, and that would create a physical buffer between the low-intensity detached houses and commercial uses. However, this requested zone change is outside of the neighborhood hub, and it does not serve as a buffer. Based on the information available at the time the staff report is prepared, it is recommended that the zone change application be denied. The character of the neighborhood is primarily residential, and introducing a higher intensity use such as a convenience store to a low density residential neighborhood is not appropriate. The site is currently zoned SF5 single family residential district, so the redevelopment of this site for low density residential uses would be appropriate. And approval of the zone change would allow high intensity uses in a primarily residential area, so the requested zone change would bring in additional light, traffic, and noise that is higher than what is normally seen in these areas. I have not received any, or I apologize, I received one comment from the public today. This was via email. This was like literally an hour before the Planning Commission, and she said she was concerned about her property values being lowered. And with that, I will stand for questions.
A question from Commissioner Johnson, please.
So in the future growth concept map,
yes,
is not the area to the south shown as commercial?
That is correct. Yeah.
So why are we saying it's not compatible?
Because the squares themselves are residential. The parcels that are in question are in a residential area.
You're saying it's zoned business or industrial, but it's actually used residential? Is that what you're saying?
So the parcels in question are located within a land use that is appropriate for residential. Yes, Scott?
Christina, maybe it would be helpful to show the zoning map
Yes.
and also the aerial shortly after. So I think the parcels that the questions are about that are shown in the comprehensive plan as commercial are the ones immediately to the south of the subject site for this zoning. And you can see that they are showing up as green and the red in this. So Christina, can you remind me, is that MF 29?
Yes, so it's MF 29 and the red is LC limited commercial.
Okay, and then can you go to the aerial image, please? And so immediately south of the subject site, outlined in red, you see the building with a parking lot, and that is in use as a church, is that correct?
Yes.
And there are actually 2 or 3 churches on that property, is in that area, is that right? There's 2 at least, Jehovah's Witness to the west, and then the
Okay.
one with the parking lot and the green roof to the east.
But the present building is being used how?
I believe it's vacant and it's just a parking lot.
There appears a
But what-
shed on there.
Oh, a shed, yes.
But what was it available for?
I believe it was previously used as an auto mechanic shop, and it's been like that for decades.
So it was being used commercial by right because it had been there for years?
Yes. That's my understanding.
So both parcels have been vacant for decades, is what you're saying?
So the parcel to the north has actually never been developed. I looked at aerials going back through the 80s and 70s and 60s, and that one's actually never been developed.
Any other questions for staff? Then let's move to the applicant's presentation, please.
Thank you for having me. My name is Ainare Subar, and I'm the owner of the property. As Christina said, I am requesting a change in zoning from single family to limited commercial. I drove around the area, and there were a lot of properties there that are currently being used for commercial purposes. And I just thought I identified a gap, which is just having like a mini farmers market for selling healthy foods for the residents in the community. So I thought that was a good idea, in addition to having a multi-family home on the other side of the lot. With that, I really have no additional thing to add. Thank you for having me.
So your plan for the use of the property is a farmer's market, possibly, and a multifamily unit.
Correct, yes.
Okay, any questions for this applicant?
But the request is not for multifamily, is it?
No, she was,
It's for limited commercial?
yes.
I guess I'm having a little problem with denying this outright, but
So I do apologize. I did not mention that there are alternative actions, which are on the page 4 of your report. So you can override the staff recommendation and improve the zone change as requested. Or we are also as an alternative action, we are recommending neighborhood retail zoning, which does not allow a convenience store, but it does allow some commercial.
Would a multifamily housing be allowed in a neighborhood residential or neighborhood retail zoning?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can look into the code and get back to you.
Yes, in neighborhood retail, multifamily is allowed up to 21.8 dwelling units an acre.
Okay, so neighborhood retail would allow multifamily and a small like restaurant or a little coffee shop or something along those lines?
Yes.
Okay, and not a convenience store. And we have a whole different thing on farmers markets, right? That's a whole nother ball of wax, I believe. Does anybody know the zoning that is necessary for a farmer's market?
I will defer to JR on that one. Looks like we're looking some stuff up.
Okay, we're gonna check. I think, ma'am, we want to make sure the zoning's appropriate for what you plan to use it for, and you might not need to have limited commercial for what you're planning. Commissioner Foster, questions?
My main concern about this Okay. Okay,
So-
sorry. My main concern about this is limited commercial is going to, whatever this particular landowner does, if we change the zoning stays until somebody changes it again. And once we make it limited commercial, we open it up to a whole lot of land uses, which I think are utterly inappropriate for this residential neighborhood.
Commissioner Johnson?
Did you have any photos of this area?
Yes, I do. I apologize. Paul, would you go to the photos, please? So this is the existing shed that's on the property. Next slide, please. And this is the residential area. As you can see, there's mostly single-family homes on Meridian and around Meridian. Next slide, please. And here are some more photos of single-family homes. Next slide, please. And then we can see the church in the background and some single-family homes. And I think that this one right here is where there might be some limited commercial. It's zoned limited commercial.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if we wanted to look at neighborhood retail, would she have to resubmit this?
No, we could make a recommendation. And did we find out what, farmer's market, what does that require, JR?
Well, we thought we knew, but we wanted to make sure, given our advanced age. LC would allow farmers market, subject to supplementary use regulations, which, if they haven't been looked at, the applicant might want to look at them because that may not be really what they want, and licensing. That's going to exist anyway. However, in our neighborhood retail does not allow farmers markets.
Does it allow a grocery store?
A retail would be, which a grocery store is retail.
Okay.
It might be limited in size because the NR is a fairly limited district, but farmers markets just are not a permitted use.
Okay. So if farmer's market wouldn't work on limited commercial. Scott?
Yeah, I think part of the challenge on this one is getting a good understanding of what the applicant is attempting to accomplish here and then where it would fit in the zoning code. And I think that that's really the crux of the situation. Because just for the discussion that you all have had about, well, what scale and intensity of development would be appropriate, and I understand that it sounds like some commissioners are looking at it saying, well, maybe what's being talked about is not a bad fit for the area, but then I know some other commissioners are looking at it saying, but everything else that's allowed in LC could be a bad fit, and so where's the appropriate place to fall on the spectrum? At this point, I don't know if it's worth having more discussion with the applicant during the meeting to try and flesh that out, or if it's better to go ahead and defer this and
I
it'll
move
give
we
us an
defer it.
opportunity.
I'd be second. No.
I have a motion to defer and a second. Any further discussion?
Just a comment that the other major concern I had as we advanced this discussion was parking and traffic. If a farmer's market or a grocery store would even fit on this site. I'm sorry, what?
Big church lot.
Okay, we have Commissioner Johnson.
Well, I know just directly south of this, we've seen the picture of the church. Just south of that was an auto parts store we built back in the day. I don't think it's an auto parts store today, but there's also a strip center behind it that's got, I think it had some bars and stuff in it. So, I mean, it's not all residential.
I think what I see is that the residential is buffered by the two churches, and then it's not like a transition area like if it was on the same block as the churches or on the opposite corner. And that is residential that nobody builds anymore, and it's really desperately needed. So I'd hate to see commercial start and more added. We do have a motion on the table for deferral with a second. And motion was Commissioner Johnson, second Commissioner Williams-Bay. Discussion, Commissioner? That was an excellent point. Do you think by the 1st of January could have more firm plans for your use, or staff could manage that for the first meeting of January?
The next available one is December 15th, or it'd be January 5th, I believe is the first one
Okay.
in January.
So
January 5th to be okay.
January 5th, let's defer to January 5th. Would that be comfortable for you to re-meet with staff to further flesh out your concepts with staff by January 5th?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for your understanding. Any other discussion on deferral? Do you agree to the date, Commissioner Williams Bay? Okay, motion is amended to include the date of January 5th for a revisit to the commission. And we have a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes 13-0, and we'll see you on January 5th.
Thank you.
And we'll see the rest of you in December. But we have one more item on our agenda. There's a certain man in the house. His name might be Stephen Banks, and I think Mr. Wadle would like to visit with us about this young man for a bit.
Yes, we can't let Stephen slip away quietly and ride off quietly into the sunset. So we've had a series of events. We've got the advanced plans meeting earlier this morning. He was recognized. We've got today's meeting, and then we have an event for him tomorrow afternoon. So I figured there's one event for each of the 10 years for each 10-year increment that he has worked here. So. But Stephen, this will be an opportunity though, just to recognize you for some of the hard work that you've done. And so just wanted to let you know that we very much appreciate you and your efforts. But we're excited for you in your retirement, but also sad that we're not going to get to see you on almost a daily basis. Your knowledge, your work efforts, and most of all, your calm manner and kindness will be missed. You've had a very positive and significant impact on Wichita and Sedgwick County. The projects you have worked on have contributed and will continue to contribute for many long years to the lives of Wichita residents and stakeholders in Sedgwick County. Since it's your retirement, I want to take a few moments to highlight some of those accomplishments, but before we get to that, I want to share some perspective. So if the records are correct, you started working here in 1988, is that correct? So that is 34 years of service, which is longer than the lifespan of a cheetah, which is 10 years, longer than the lifespan of an American bison, which is 20 years, and even exceeds that of a polar bear, which is 25 years. So quite an accomplishment. In 1998, we didn't have smartphones. Computers were very big, right? It took up a full desk. The top movies included Die Hard, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Coming to America. So just to give some folks some perspective. Apparently the top song was Roll With It by Stephen Winwood. Anyone familiar with that one? Yeah, it's going back a few. Yeah, okay, we've got a contingent over here. And the most famous person in America at that time was Roseanne Barr.
Oh my gosh. She's still alive.
So I think she just barely eked you out there, Stephen, huh? Most famous person in America. Stephen, it's my understanding that you served in two different divisions in the planning department. So you started out in the transportation division and now works in the advanced plans division. So, and in terms of that service, you've accomplished many different and variety of things, one including the transit center design in downtown. Is that correct? And I believe you have a rendering of what it was supposed to look like, and it truly was constructed to be later on at least you had one in your office at some point. So you've worked on transit planning and have continued to work on that mostly through most of your career. You did a little bit of park planning, it looked like, back around 1995. And it looks like vacant lot inventories. You've been doing that sporadically at different periods of time in the 90s all the way through today. But in addition, you'd worked on environmental reviews for HUD projects, and you've really started out the mapping, I think, here in the planning department and have continued that through to today. And I'm kind of bewildered sometimes by the databases that you maintained for that. So I'm sure you may get a few phone calls in the future. But in addition to those pieces of work, you've really done some signature reports and have done these on an annual basis. So you may be familiar with the key indicators report that Stephen has produced the census information, for which he gets many, many phone calls, and also his development trends reports, which those of you on the Advanced Plans Committee are very familiar with. We often rely on Stephen for technical and financial analysis, especially with the comprehensive plan. You played a very key role in that, and that's been a plan that has served us well over time. And then you've also educated hundreds of thousands through your participation in community classes through the Earth Workshop. These were discontinued recently, but they were when they would bring together school children, hundreds of school children. And I remember that Stephen was always very poised and very patient getting through the materials with everyone there. And there are also thousands of questions that you've answered through customer calls. And I think every day you get a number of calls that we aren't even aware of why or who or what the nature of them are, but usually technical census calls or specific demographic issues that have come up for a variety of different organizations. But in addition to all of that, you've had some less publicized accomplishments but that are no less sensational, and those include staying calm, sometimes in an office of stressed out folks. I think Stephen is about the calmest person in the entire office. Clearly thinking through extremely complicated situations. I think you've always had a great knack of analysis and kind of progressing through the steps that are needed. And then most of all, I always appreciate your smile and that you have a light touch to help guide folks through difficult and challenging processes and situations. So very much appreciate you, Stephen. So for all of this, we say thank you and congratulations. We'll miss you here at work, but we know where you live and we have your cell phone number. So I find that very reassuring. So with that, before we turn it over to him for rebuttal, I'm going to ask Mary, is there anything that I missed, Mary, or anything you'd like to add? Okay. So with that, Stephen, I don't know if you've got any words that you'd like to say. Yes, we will move. There you go.
Well, it's been an interesting 34 years. When I got here, we were drafting reports by hand and giving them to a secretary to enter into a mainframe. And it was David Knopick, some of you might remember him, who brought in a computer for a project one day, and it impressed the manager so much that he started authorizing us to actually buy PCs for our desks. And for a number of years, I would help with setup of those PCs, installing software, upgrades, and that sort of thing. And it was actually Ray Onoveros, some of you may remember him, who actually was able to bring GIS to our office. And from there, we've actually done quite a bit of stuff that we could not do in those early years. And it's been exciting developing a lot of this over time, often a challenge, and some things just took a time without a roadmap. It's how are we going to do this? And we plowed a lot of new ground. Was the city and county always together? During my tenure, yes, that goes back actually quite a ways. And it was kind of challenged a bit during a few years back with a couple of county commissioners, and we're finally hiring some people back that we lost back then. We actually lost a few planners during that time because of budget crisis that put us into. So it's nice to see that coming back around. So anyway, I've enjoyed it, and but as I was explaining in advanced plans earlier, I have a new definition for retirement. It's a little bit of a play on words. New treads for going new places in life. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
anyway,
Thank you.
all. And
Stephen, you've clearly brought this organization into the computer age. I think one of the lifespans that you missed, Scott, is that you've worked longer than lifespan of some of your coworkers. And that really puts it into perspective, doesn't it? I love the maps and the visual aids that you bring to our work. I think when we get a stack of papers, you forget all that it takes to put those maps in play and the data that underlies them. And tomorrow at your reception, the gratitude of the commission will be in a basket somewhere for you to find. All right, thank you. We appreciate your work. And for the rest of the story of those wild commissioner days, I think you have to wait till after Monday, his last day in the office, for a conference call at the Monarch, and we can get the rest of the story there, perhaps. Thank you, Stephen. Tomorrow, there'll be a reception in this room from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. So that we can chat with him directly. Thank you, and with that, the meeting is adjourned.